What's up, people? Welcome back to the channel. Northlane have dropped new music since Dante, and I've just been buzzing to hear new music. This one's called Miasma, which sounds like something someone with breathing difficulties would scream out when they're looking for their inhaler. Buzzing to hear this. Northlane are one of the few bands left in the metalcore space that don't bore the absolute life out of me. So let's see what they have to offer. Let's go.
Catch my vibe, I'm about to reignite. Catch my vibe, I'm about to reignite. It's a chemical
A little bit less accessible than Dante for sure. This one's a bit wacky. Alright, so I have listened to this song, I'd say 6 times now at this point. I went over to Spotify because we'll get on to some of the points I have about, why I jumped into Spotify, having listened to it on YouTube for the first time. So let's start off with initial thoughts when the track first came on. A bit of a shock to the system, after hearing the likes of Dante, you know, something like this was a little bit different, definitely heavier than what I was expecting after the back of Dante being so fucking good. This track to me seems like the most versatile example of a track that incorporates all eras of Northlane into one. The intro of the track sounds like it has almost like a lead guitar tapping riff that starts off the entire track. So the first sounds you actually hear on the track sound like it's coming directly from their older days, like, you know, the more, I guess, traditionally metalcore riffy stuff with very prominent guitars. But at the same time, they blur the lines so much between what is guitars and what is synth. It kind of sounds like it starts with a guitar riff and then slowly transitions into something that will be a little bit more, I guess, modern and synthy. So kind of hard to know. I do like that it is definitely a blend between that guitar and synth stuff, but this track is undeniably a lot different to Dante in the sense that the guitars kind of take center stage for the most part in this track, and not so much production and, I guess, EDM slash synth orientated, which I guess is probably a good thing for some of the older fans. I'm kind of indifferent to it as long as this song sounds good. Like Dante, for example, didn't have the most prominent guitar parts. I still fuck with that song so much. I love it so much. But all of the different eras of Northlane. So we kind of started out feeling like a bit of an older Northlane track with, again, whatever that was, whether it be synth or guitar, it just had that vibe to it, an older sound. And then we very quickly got that reminder of the alien sounds. To me, that's just those Meshuggah-esque chugs with that Northlane tone. I don't know what it is. I know there's only so many different ways you can actually get a, you know, a zero to be, you know, actually sounding, you know, the tone can only go so many different ways. To me, that Northlane chug is just so prominent. I don't know if it's because of all the synth and all of the production that like holds it up all the time, but to me it's just so obvious, and instantly my brain went to that really like almost gritty kind of sinister sound that we get in Alien, and then more so Obsidian just throughout the entire vibe of the track. There was certain moments where the synth were really prominent, like really big, you know, EDM, concert, dance music sounding synths in the back of the mix throughout. So the Obsidian sound is kind of just like the new era to me, but now they're finding a way to blur the lines between all of the different sounds that we've heard over the years. So I think they're really going to come into their own in this album. Although a lot of people think that maybe they kind of came into their own with Obsidian, I think this is going to be their chance in this album to really amalgamate all of the different sounds that they've kind of gone through, you know, throughout the different stages of their career. So this track definitely feels a little bit more like traditionally metal. Dante had the inclusion of, you know, 7-string guitars, but it was only really when you watch the video that you can kind of get an understanding of when the guitars were coming in. It felt like this track, the guitars were produced in such a way that they were the forefront of the mix, whereas in Dante, they were kind of like maybe a little bit buried underneath all of the, you know, post-production, the synth wave, all of that mad production that's going on that these guys are so good at doing. It felt like, you know, in Dante they were kind of a little bit pushed back, whereas this one they really came forward, and this was like, again, a more traditionally metal track. Again, the vibe that these guys create, like I said in the intro, a lot of metalcore stuff these days to me is really just by the numbers, and it can get really repetitive and really boring, bearing in mind that I've only been listening to metalcore for like 2.5, 3 years, if even, and I'm already at a point where I feel like I've heard what metalcore has to offer for the most part. That's why there's certain outlier bands that really do the basic stuff well, or they're bands that take risks and do stuff that is really, really creative. And in this case, Northlane, again, I don't think I like this track as much as Dante, but it's still so evident that they're just trying so many different things. Like, the nostalgic vibe I get from this, whilst it also feeling so futuristic, is mental. It feels like the Matrix slash Time Splitters all like blending together. I don't know, it just sounds fresh, regardless whether or not you enjoy it that much. I can understand why, you know, traditional metalheads maybe wouldn't be the biggest fan of this, but just from my own perspective, it's fresh, because again, I'm kind of already fatigued by a lot of metalcore projects, and again, I've only been listening to for a couple of years, but I can imagine people who've been listening for 5, 10 plus years, how boring the genre can get if bands don't take risks like this. And then the last kind of positive point I want to make before I just touch on one maybe slightly negative, or even just maybe constructive, or just my own opinion really, that is maybe skewed a little bit more negatively. I'll touch on the final thing, which is the feature, which is Winston McCall from Parkway Drive. Now, I haven't heard much of Parkway Drive, so I wouldn't be too familiar with their music and know when to look out for them in certain vocal moments. Obviously, I'm very familiar with Marcus's voice, so the breakdown moment was obviously featuring Parkway Drive's vocalist Winston, and Not much to say. I mean, he fit the vibe of the track very well. It didn't feel shoehorned in just to say we got like Parkway Drive's vocalist on a track. Obviously a pretty big feature, you know, the two Aussie powerhouses colliding. But, you know, he just fit the vibe very, very well. I didn't feel like it was shoehorned in. It didn't sound like kind of jarring to transition from Marcus's screams over to Winston's. But, you know, heavy track all around, very, very fun. And the only thing I'll say as like a semi-negative point is that, I don't know if it's just me, and I want to get your opinions in the comments down below. I've listened to this multiple times now on the same setup that I use for everything. Now, maybe my setup is just not great. I don't know. I'm using a Go XLR interface with these Audio Technica 8. I don't know what these ones, you guys know, everyone has them. But they're not a bad set of headphones. Now, I do get a better sound quality out of my Focusrite when I have it connected up as opposed to the Go XLR. But this is like, you know, still a decent setup. And I just felt like I want to say the vocal production, I'm not necessarily saying it was flawed in any way or bad, but just for me, when I was listening to it, I couldn't help but feel like, because of how big of a production they've gone for with everything with the guitar. See, now the problem is that like the production was so large and grand in Dante, and that was like kind of with the guitars pushed to the back. Now when you bring the guitars forward and you still have the inclusion of all those synths and all of the electronic elements and all of the, you know, cool elements that are just being brought into the mix in general, I felt like Marcus kind of got lost a little bit when he was screaming. And now there was also a very prominent distortion effect on his vocals in some parts by the sounds of it. Some parts a little bit more obvious than others, but I know they go for that vocal style in a lot of like the Alien tracks off of that album. But to me, I was listening to it on YouTube first and I was like, this sounds completely different to Dante. And then I was like, right, maybe it's just the YouTube compression. Spotify, I listened to a few times and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys let me know if you can pick up on anything. I'm not necessarily saying that the vocal production is in any way bad. I've listened to the track a few more times now, and as I've understood the structure of it, it started to become a lot better and I'm getting into it a little bit more. But on the first few listens, I was kind of trying to figure it out. I was like really struggling to kind of even make out what Marcus was saying. Did just feel slightly like he was very far back and pushed out a little bit by all of the noise and the busyness of the mix in general. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, guys. My rating for this track is going to be 8.5. I still really enjoyed it. It was probably an 8 off of first listen, but having listened to it a few more times on Spotify and hearing like the breakdown with Winston, but there's also a really heavy moment before the breakdown with Marcus in the second verse. So that was really, really sick as well. It's very, very heavy Northlane, but also has like subtle hints of melody throughout it that I think are really going to stick with me over time. Not as like instantly catchy as Dante to me, but it is a different track, of course. It's a lot more, you know, on the chuggy side, a lot more metal, we'll call it. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, guys. I'm signing out. Look after yourselves. Thanks for watching. Cheers.